And now begins a trial scene. We hear it from Prisca's point of view. But you said, O Lord, you said it to Paul, that none would attack him to harm him. Jesus, keep your promise. Keep your promise. I wanted to see Paul when he came out. I wanted to be close to events. This was not a choice. It was the pressure of my heart. I hardly knew then how I kept moving forward through the crowds toward the bema and the judgment seat. I'm a light and little woman. All Corinth is taller than me. I slipped through the gaps among the people. I lost Aquila. I arrived alone at the platform built in front of the bema. I put my toes right at its bottom step so that no one could stand in front of me. O God and Father of my Lord Jesus Christ, comfort Paul, comfort your servant and my dear brother in his affliction. The bema is twice as high as I am and long, both left and right. It's like the rostra in Rome, both of them podiums for speaking, for meetings and proclaimings, or judgments. There are rooms on the ground level at either end. Paul was in one of those rooms, waiting. The platform between the bema and me was empty. It was 3 steps high with a rail around the edges. No one stood in the space that divided the platform from the bema. No one could during the hours of judgment. I watched as servants brought out Gallio's chair. Wooden, carved, magnificent, with armrests and a back. Crowds milled everywhere in the forum, laughing, shouting, enjoying the flush of noonday wine and bellies full of bread. They had gathered to eat. But the appearance of the proconsul's chair signaled the judgments to come and gave focus to their woozy interest. The man beside me yelled, "Who's accused? Who's gonna bleed?" I recognized the voice. I took a quick sideways glance and saw Apelles, the irascible shoemaker who had despised Paul from the very beginning. His body stank of a sour sweat, but I would not move and lose my place at the platform. Kyrie eleison. A door in the wall at the back of the bema opened. 4 soldiers emerged and took up positions left and right of the chair. A scribe next, with his writing kit, moved toward a low stool and sat. Several secretaries appeared. Then came Gallio himself. He was tall and lean, his spine bent somewhat forward. The wind caught at his toga. When he gathered the cloth in his hand, I could see how sunken was his chest. Where was there space to breathe in the man? His motion was courtly. He acknowledged the crowds by inclining his head, but he frowned faintly, and at the back of his hand whispered something to one of the secretaries, who looked at the people and shrugged. Gallio lowered himself into the chair. His knees beneath the folds of the toga were painfully sharp. He coughed into a linen cloth, then nodded. The scribe called out a name in Latin, not Paul's name, not the name of anyone I knew. Patience, patience, Prisca, while prayers kept flying from my lips. At the crying of the name, a small round man came bustling out of the room to the left of the bema. He was followed by 3 others, 2 with weapons and 1 in shackles, a tall, raw-boned fellow with long blonde hair. "Adverso," the small man shouted in Latin as he stomped up the steps and through the railing to the platform. He carried a tablet on which these exact words were inscribed, but he probably couldn't read. "I assert," he declared, "that this slave belongs to me in virtue of the law of the Quirites." Nervous, angry, pointing at the man in shackles, "This one, this barbarian slave, they found him in Thrace, posing as a grammaticus." Gallio leaned forward. To the blond slave he said, "You can read?" The round man screamed, "So he can read, so what? What's that got to do with anything?" People closest to the platform clucked and whistled their contempt, but whether for the anger or else for the reading, I couldn't tell. "And you," Gallio said to the owner, "I suppose you have proof of ownership?" "Purchase documents. Bought 'em young, insolent, lazy." The proconsul ignored the rest of the round man's outburst. He leaned left and said to the scribe, "The action has been initiated." It was a formal pronouncement, which the scribe wrote swiftly upon his tablets. "The issue before us," Gallio said, "is ownership, which, if proven, condemns the slave for the theft of his own person. In that case, the fugitivus will be flogged and branded on the forehead with the letter F." People in the forum produced a smattering of applause. Apelles the shoemaker shouted, "I train slaves." He reached over the railing and slapped the white slave on his buttocks. "Good sir, rich sir," he laughed, "let me train your hairless slave." At the same time, the proconsul was naming an adjudicator for this case and setting a date for the arguments. He looked at the plaintiff below, who said, "Yes, yes, yes." "Clear the stand," a soldier commanded. Master and slaves left by that narrow pit between the platform and the bema. Then the scribe stood up to call another name. Stop.